The first head, slavery. The beast, 7 heads, 10 horns. An image that has terrified generations of readers of the Book of Revelation. But there's one detail most of us have never stopped to look at closely. Those 7 heads aren't just frightening symbols. They tell a story, and that story had already been unfolding long before John ever wrote a single word. To understand what the first head represents, we have to go back to the text itself. In Revelation 17, an angel explains something to John with remarkable clarity. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, and they are also 7 kings. In other words, each head represents a kingdom, an empire that in its own time rose up against God's people. And the first one is the oldest of them all, Egypt. It was there that Israel's story was truly shaped, not as a free nation, but as a nation in bondage. Entire generations were born and died under the lash of Egyptian slavery, building cities they would never call their own. And there's something interesting about that. At first, Egypt didn't try to destroy Israel through outright violence. It simply held them captive, slowly, patiently, until God intervened through Moses and the 10 plagues that shook the greatest empire of its time. The first head fell, but the pattern it established never disappeared. The second head, erasure. Centuries passed. Israel was no longer a nation of slaves. It had its own land, its own kings, its own temple, but the kingdom became divided. Israel in the north, Judah in the south. And it was the northern kingdom that felt the weight of the next head, Assyria. Unlike Egypt, which oppressed people gradually, Assyria became infamous for something far more brutal: total war. Cities reduced to rubble, entire populations deported far from their homeland, mixed with foreign peoples until they lost their identity. That's exactly what happened in 722 BC. The northern kingdom fell, and the 10 tribes who lived there virtually disappeared from history. Here's a detail few people notice. If Egypt taught the world how to enslave, Assyria taught the world how to erase. The third head, false worship. While the northern kingdom had already been destroyed, the southern kingdom, Judah, continued to stand, until an even more ambitious empire emerged: Babylon. And here the story takes on a different tone. This wasn't just conquest, it was humiliation. Jerusalem was surrounded. The temple, the holiest place for God's people, was torn down stone by stone. And the king responsible for it all, Nebuchadnezzar, erected a massive golden statue and demanded that everyone bow before it. Babylon didn't just want to rule territories, it wanted to be worshipped. That detail matters, because it's that very spirit, the demand for worship, that returns in full force near the end of the Book of Revelation. Babylon fell, but its spirit never truly died. The fourth head legalized extermination. And if this is already changing the way you see the Book of Revelation, subscribe now, because what's coming next is even more surprising. Leave a like and let's keep going. After Babylon came another great power, Medo-Persia, and once again the threat changed its form. This time it wasn't slavery, it wasn't military destruction, it was something quieter. And because of that, even more dangerous: a plan. In the Book of Esther, a man named Haman convinces the Persian king to sign a decree ordering the extermination of every Jew in the empire. Every single one. On a single day. And the most frightening part is, it almost worked. If not for the courage of a queen willing to risk her own life, there might not have been a story left to tell. The fourth head reveals something the previous ones did not. Sometimes the greatest threat doesn't come from armies. It comes from a pen and a signature. The fifth head, cultural corruption. After the Persians came a young general who reshaped the map of the ancient world in just a few years, Alexander the Great. And with him came the fifth head, Greece. But the greatest danger Greece posed wasn't military, it was cultural. Hellenization spread the Greek language, customs, philosophy, and gods throughout every conquered land, including Israel. And decades later, one of Alexander's successors, Antiochus Epiphanes, went even further. He desecrated the temple in Jerusalem. He sacrificed a pig on the sacred altar. And under penalty of death, he outlawed some of the most essential practices of the Jewish faith. It was an attempt to erase an entire identity, from the inside out. Not with swords, but with culture. The sixth head, persecution. And now we arrive at the empire that was ruling the world when John received this vision: Rome. Not surprisingly, it's the most detailed head in the entire book. Rome destroyed the Second Temple in AD 70. Rome imprisoned, persecuted, and executed the first Christians. And it was under the Roman Empire during the reign of Emperor Domitian that John wrote the Book of Revelation while exiled on the island of Patmos. In other words, and the sixth head wasn't a memory of the past. For the first readers of Revelation 9, it was the present. The angel even summarizes it plainly. 5 heads had already fallen. That one was Rome. The 7th head, total control. And this is where the prophecy stops looking only backward. The same angel says something that changes everything. 1 head had not yet come, and when it did come, it would remain only for a little while. Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. Each had already played its role in history. But the text leaves the door open for one final power, a kingdom that would embody something from every one of those that came before it. The cruelty of Assyria, the pride of Babylon, the cultural influence of Greece, the persecution of Rome. And then there's another astonishing detail. The text speaks of a head that received a deadly wound, yet was healed, as though an empire that seemed permanently destroyed could somehow rise again in a final and even more powerful form. It is this return that Christian tradition associates with the reign of the Antichrist, the culmination of everything these 7 heads have represented. And perhaps this is exactly where many people misunderstand the prophecy. Many imagine the beast as nothing more than a terrifying monster that suddenly appears at the end of time. But Revelation describes something far more complex, far more organized, far more systematic. Not merely a creature that destroys cities, but a power capable of influencing governments, shaping cultures, controlling minds, and convincing entire populations that they are following the right path. Perhaps that's what makes this final head even more terrifying than any monster ever could. If you look closely, you'll notice the same pattern repeating itself in every one of these heads. Slavery, destruction, humiliation, planned extermination, cultural corruption, religious persecution, and finally, a power that brings all of those things together at once. But there's something equally important running through every one of these stories. None of these heads achieved a permanent victory. Egypt fell, Assyria fell, Babylon fell. Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. They all fell. And the book of Revelation doesn't end with the beast victorious. It ends with the beast defeated. Perhaps that's the true purpose of this prophecy, not to make us fear some monster hidden in the future, but to teach us how to recognize the systems that rise again and again throughout history, promising absolute power, demanding absolute loyalty, and placing themselves in the position of God. Because every time that happened, that empire looked invincible, and every single time it fell. If you've made it this far, you probably see the beast very differently than you did when this video began. Perhaps it's less of a monster waiting to appear, and far more of a pattern humanity keeps repeating. Let me know in the comments what surprised you the most, and click on the next video because it takes this very prophecy one step further than everything we've explored today.